I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to do some immersion speckles on both superwash and some non-superwash stock yarns. I have played around with doing speckles on non-superwash yarn a few times now. Actually, many times, including one of the first episodes of Dyepot Weekly. But what I haven't tried before is using fingering weight non-superwash yarn. I've done this on worsted weight, and the plies in worsted weight are a little bit thicker, especially in wool of the Andes, they're a little bit loftier, and so that makes colors spread more, whether or not you're dealing with superwash or non. And so I thought it would be fun to look at this on some non-superwash stock yarns where, since they have 3 or 4 ply, I believe, the twist is a little bit tighter, the strands are smaller, and well, I'm curious to see how this will compare to some superwash yarn. Before I go and talk more about the bases, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to today's lab partner, Stephanie. Stephanie, thank you so much for being my lab partner today, and happy birthday! I hope that you're going to have a really, really great day. The 3 yarn bases we have here are Wool to Dye For's Platinum Sock, which is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. We have the limited edition Bare Merino Fingering from KnitPicks, which is 80% merino wool, 20% nylon. So these are a pretty fair comparison. It's just one's superwash, one's not. And then finally, we have the organic fingering yarn from Wool to Dye For, which is 100% organic merino wool and doesn't have any nylon in it. If you would like to learn more about any of these yarn bases, I will have links and affiliate links down in the video description. To help me keep track of the different bases, I did label these zip ties with numbers, where 1 is going to be the platinum, 2 will be the Bare Merino Fingering from KnitPicks, and then 3 will be the organic merino fingering from Wool to Dye For. I am going to pre-soak all of the yarn in some plain tap water for at least 30 minutes, probably more like a couple of hours. And I will go ahead and add more liquid into this container. But I just wanted to say, plain tap water, no acid in it. I'm wearing my respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves so we can prepare some dye for our speckling. Now in here I have some Dharma True Black Acid Dye mixed with citric acid powder. And I'm going to make a little bit more of it because I don't think I quite have enough. So I'm going to take about a teaspoon of the citric acid powder, and to it we're going to add some black dye. And now using the other end of the spoon, I'm going to take a bit of dye. Now this is far less than a teaspoon, but the purpose here is to dilute the dye with the citric acid powder so that way we can spread the dye out further, and this should either appear as sharp black speckles, or if they spread a little bit, they'll be more gray. In my full-size catering steam pan, I am going to add 8 cups of water, 4 tablespoons of white vinegar, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to just kind of quickly stir things up. There we go. And now we'll add our yarn. There is still some liquid in these skeins, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I'm going to lay them out and sort of spread things out here a bit. Now, the water level could be lower if I didn't want things to spread, but I'm really curious to see the difference that we have between our superwash and non-superwash yarns. In case you're curious, we have skeins 1, 2 in the middle, and then 3 down here. And so now I am going to start heating things up, and then we will start speckling. But I'm on top of a gas stove with 2 burners here and here. In addition to the True Black, I'm going to use a few other colors, but first I'm going to reduce the heat to low just so that way it's less steamy. The first color is Teal Green. This is a nice deep teal color. It's one that is very pretty, and I'm trying to use just tiny amounts of this straight powder. One of the reasons why I decided to do both
straight powder and something that is a little bit more sharper, like what we're trying to do with the black, is because I really enjoy the contrast of it. And it's something I've liked lately. So we're seeing some spread here. I'll zoom in a bit, but we're going to see that across the board here. This can be a fun feature of doing like immersion speckles. As I mentioned, we certainly, oh, that's a little bit thicker. I'm using Spearmint Breeze now. We certainly could be lower immersion, but by having it this way, these patches of color will be a little bit bigger on the yarn. I am just very curious to see how what we have will compare across these different yarn bases. But anyway, I'm going to do the Spearmint Breeze, which will give us a brighter green color. And again, I'm trying to be pretty light overall with it before we come in with the black. Now, if I take a bigger pinch of our black dye now, the nice thing is that it will immediately spread more. So I went a little heavy down here, and I'm going to add more onto that skein to sort of be a little consistent. But this is a lot more like sprinkling sugar on, because there's a grittiness to it. However, you can still go really, really light and just get a little bit of some flex, or we can be a little heavier and have fun there. And so there's not a lot of rhyme or reason about where I'm placing this, except for the fact that I'm just kind of curious what these colors will do on the different bases. All right. I just set a timer for 10 minutes so we can wait a bit before flipping the yarn. And what I see right now is sharper speckles on our superwash yarn. That's not a surprise. Not at all. But I do see speckles on these other bases. And so, yeah, it's just particularly with the straight powder, that's where it seems to be a bit softer. But after the 10 minutes, I'll go ahead and zoom in then, because that'll give more time for some change, and yeah.
I decided to change the camera to handheld so you can start to see the difference. See how over here the colors feel almost more vibrant? There's still some spread around those speckles, but not as much as we see on the two non-superwash colorways. And that goes for the black and the other colors. When doing side-by-side comparisons, I like to, or when I'm doing something that I haven't done as much of, like speckling with non-superwash yarn, I do really like to have a control of a yarn base that I know really, really well. And in this case, that would be the Superwash Stroll, because that's one I've speckled on a lot. And therefore, we can see like, oh, is the difference because maybe I have too much water or not enough acid, or I'm using the wrong dye colors? We can kind of see how it compares. Now, do I think we're going to end up with a gorgeous colorway on the non-superwash yarns? Absolutely. It's just not going to be as sharp speckles. So anyway, I'm going to put my respirator back on, and we're going to finish speckling this yarn. When doing any kind of speckling technique, making sure your fingers are as dry as possible is really, really important. I also had a skein of KnitPicks Hawthorne fingering weight yarn off camera that I was using as a yarn mop for both this and another video. I'll show that to you in a little bit. But I was wiping the dry powder that was left on my fingertips in between each color onto this skein of yarn to create another fun colorway. Do you need to wait 10 minutes in between flips? Not necessarily, maybe 5 would be plenty, but sometimes I like to wait to just make sure the colors are well set, so that way by moving the yarn I'm not spreading out the color. With the pan this crowded, I will need to do a few flips because I'm going to want to get some amount of coverage over the yarn, even though I'm not going in super heavy. I don't want huge white patches left behind. Once I was satisfied with the color coverage, I waited 5 to 10 minutes and then added more water and vinegar, so that way the yarn could finish setting for a total of 30 minutes. I just turned off the heat and I'm now going to take the yarn and carefully set it aside so it can cool completely before we can wash it. Especially because 2 of these skeins are non-superwash. But I am happy to say, while there is spread, I do see some nice speckles on here. So I am very, very pleased with that. Pleased that we can have this much water in here and still get decent speckles on non-superwash yarn. But that is warm. But anyway, I will be back once the yarn is cool. And here is our yarn mop after I used it in another project. It's so pretty. I'll wash this off camera, but show it off at the end of the video. Let's wash this yarn. Stephanie, I don't yet know which one I am going to send you. I like all of them for different reasons. I'm most curious actually at this point to see if there's much of a difference between having non-superwash merino with nylon and without. But I'm not sure how much conclusion I may or may not be able to draw there. But anyway, I'm not seeing any bleeding. So I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little bit of some dish soap. And very, very gently. Yeah, we're not having any bleeding. So I'm gonna go ahead and rinse out the soap, put all the yarn through my spin dryer, hang it up to dry, and then we can take a closer look at it. Here we have the finished yarn. We've got the KnitPicks Stroll, the KnitPicks Merino fingering, and then Wool to Dye For's organic fingering. And in all of them, we do have speckles. They just feel different. On the Stroll, we have sharp black speckles. We do have some spread around our mint and our teal, but you do see a sharp speckle sort of in the center there. On the Merino fingering, which is our non-superwash merino nylon blend, we do have speckles, but they look more pastel gray because rather than striking as quickly, they spread a little bit more on contact and it looks almost a little bit more blurry than what we had seen on the Stroll. And the same can be seen for the teal and the mint. Even though there are spots where we feel the mint and the teal speckles, again, they are softer overall. It does look like I added a lot more pigment overall to the organic merino fingering from Wool to Dye For. Again, we have sort of gray blown out speckles, and then we see similar like blurredness from the teal and from the mint in here. Yeah, it really, really looks like this one had a lot more pigment. I'm not sure if I added a lot more dye on here or if things just spread a lot more. That I can't say for sure, but what we can say is that there is definitely a difference between superwash and non-superwash with speckling, which is something that we knew, but we did achieve speckles on non-superwash yarn. It's another view of the superwash versus non-superwash. When you're looking far back, it isn't as obvious as when you go close, but it's mostly the black speckles on the superwash that sell the story. I do think the non-superwash yarn is all gorgeous. I'm just glad that we had this for comparison so we know, okay, it wasn't the technique that's why the colors are blown out as much, even though that maybe there's things that we could do in the future to keep the speckles even sharper. But in the circumstances where we do get sharp speckles on superwash yarn, it might not be that sharp on non-superwash still. But in those circumstances where we get super sharp speckles on superwash yarn, we may not on non-superwash yet. This yarn mop also made an appearance in another video, which brought in some more of those purple and blue hues, but I just wanted to show you all how it ended up. Stephanie, thank you so much for being my lab partner today. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you're gonna love your yarn. I also hope that you have a really, really happy birthday. If you at home would like to learn more about how you can become a lab partner like Stephanie, go and check out the listings in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. And if you have any questions about lab partners, last minute lab partners, and what the different options are, feel free to message me on Etsy so we can chat about it. I have such a collection of different yarn bases in my stash because I like to get different samples to touch and feel and play with. And it's fun to pull them out and finally dye. And in fact, I have like a mid-year resolution, although I suppose by the time this video comes out, it's the end of the year. But I started in mid-2022 having a resolution to try to incorporate yarn bases outside of my go-to comfort zone, more often in videos. And so if there are any fiber types that you would really like to see me play with, if you want to see more techniques on non-superwash yarn, please let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that jazz. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching.